maybe this one. I don't know. It's relying on your previous assignment. So in your case, you need to have your previous assignment. I have just an assignment here to make the point. So you see here on the left hand side. Let's see if I can enlarge this. No, I cannot. But you still can see it. You see that global variables right there? And there's local variables. What do you think those are? All right, so local are variables you can determine or declare for your project you're working on, whereas global variables are variables you can build that you can eventually can export to other projects, right? That's the fundamental difference between the two of those, right? And so if you open up global variables, like I'm trying here, it'll bring up the screen of everything you could possibly address and more. Notice that there's some other interesting variables in here that have to do with word-based instructions, right? Not just Boolean, word-based instruction. We're not gonna go deeper, but I want you to have the basic understanding of those two guys. Global variables, variables I can declare and I can export, right? Local variables, variables that I can build for my specific work project I'm working on. And then there's a few other things that it can be delicate, if you will, if you modify them, because they're going to change the whole structure, how the controller is going to respond there. Now, observe that we also have, in addition to the Boolean ones we've been using, there is other types like cycle counters, time-based variables, right? You see them here, right? And a mix of them that are already set for you. They don't have to worry about those, right? Those are the global variables. Now, if we open local variables, there's nothing in there, okay? And that is because local variables are to be built, right? You create those. And so I am gonna pick up from the, I don't know what page is that, 8 on your assignment to get you going. You're not gonna lose anything. Just make sure you have your previous assignment open, okay? You're gonna need that to build upon that. So what I would do if I was you is open up the previous assignment and then rename it, right? That way you have the previous plus the new one, okay? I'll give you one or 2 minutes when you guys are ready to do that, okay? And the label they have for this second assignment is motor circuit, which is exactly what I have here. So the motor circuit is here. It's a little bit of a different variation that I have, but it's the project that you need to have some sort of motor circuit, because you're going to add on a couple of important blocks to this project. One is the timer, and the other one is the any to any converter. There's a block instruction that we use to convert from one form of variable to another, right? So like numerical to integer to real and things like that. And so, all right, so we're there. So when you open up the local variables, which I already have here, right? You're gonna create, according to the instructions, a new variable called motor underscore on underscore time. So right there, we're gonna click and then set, okay, we're gonna create a motor underscore on underscore time. So that's one variable that we are creating. And if you just tab, you come to select the data time. And what we want this is to be a timer. So you're gonna change the data type to time. Okay, so motor on time is the variable, and then we're going to change that to time. If you just hit enter, it'll create the next row for you to add on the next variable. We're in local variables, right? All right, next is the motor on time underscore milliseconds. So we're going to create another one that is similar. Motor underscore on underscore time underscore milliseconds. We're going to use these variables to make conversions. So this controllers use integers and reals. And an integer is a whole number, right? And a real is a floating number. And so in this case, we want this to be an integer, int. Okay, Ezra, are you there? I see a little worry. Are you not here? Where I am? Okay. All right. Basically, if you pull out assignment number 2, this is what I'm following, right? I'm just giving you my own version with shortcut. So if you go to week number 6 and then just open up assignment number 2, this is page number 8, what I'm doing right now. Okay, enter. And there's another one assignment that we need to create, and that's a motor timer. So I'm going to call that motor timer. We want to time out events on a motor execution, and that's going to be a ton of money, I wish, right? You recognize that? Timer on delay, right? So that's our timer on delay. Okay, and with that, we have completed a task, which is declaring assignments in CCW, right? Now, just a little heads up here. If I amplify or expand the motor timer, I think I missed the timer, right? Motor timer should be motor timer. Okay. So if I expand that, hey, something we have discussed, right? The bits on the timer instruction, the input, the PT, the Q, the ET. See, these names are a little bit different than the ones that we discussed. We talked about enable, done beat, right? Timing, timer, timing. But in reality, it's just a label difference. The function is the same. Notice that the IN bit, it's a Boolean type, and it says if rising age starts increasing, right? And then the PT, that's the time, maximum program time. That's the preset time, right? So now we're dealing with a little bit of a more complex instruction, which is a timer, which is a word-based instruction. Okay, so we're good. So next, we're gonna implement a block type instruction that is using the any to time data conversion block. All right, so let's see how we do this. Drag it over. Actually, we have to implement the block first. I think that's how this is done. Okay. Let me just verify local block. Instruction block. Okay, all right, so we're gonna go back to our ladder, and we're gonna pull from the toolbox an instruction block. Actually, why don't we do this? We need a branch here before we do that. So let's get a branch. Right, so we need a branch somewhere in here. This branch actually goes on the motor itself or the output itself. That's where our, come on branch, move over. So it doesn't let us move the branch over. I'm gonna just add surround with branches there. So I have a little shortcut to do that. And so if you just right click on the output, you should be able to get the same that I got. Okay, so that's the branch. Then we're gonna call the block. Okay, and this is where we can select the block instruction. So we want a ton, timer on delay. And before you click on that one, just be watchful because you need to select the proper. So under instance, there's gonna be a motor timer, and that's what we want. So ton motor timer under the instance. Okay, and this guy actually goes back here. That's where the timer is gonna go, right? That's where a timer is. Just checking the tutorial, make sure I'm not skipping anything. All right, so the input and output elements of the timer, we're gonna go here, and this is what the variables that we created are gonna be. Motor on time. I don't think we have to worry about the output on this particular timer block. We need to somehow enable a beat on that rung. So we're gonna have to add another instruction. And that's gonna be a normally close, reverse contact, and here. And we're gonna use a timer beat to be able to trigger that so that when the timer goes off, it turns the system off. Okay, so local variables is what we want. If we click in there, the variables we declare are gonna be there. And we're gonna expand the motor timer. And what we want there is the enable bit, if you will, it's called Q here, motor timer Q. We want that instruction to be there. So we have a motor timer Q, which is the address of that instruction we just put in there. All right, so far so good. So now we're gonna add a block converter, which is adding another rung. All right, so there comes another rung. Add a rung. insert rung below. So there's my new rung. And I'm going to add a new block from the toolbar, instruction block, to that rung. And now I want the any to time conversion block, this guy right here, right? Any to time conversion. I'm going to say okay to that. Okay, so that's the any to time converter block. It's going to take an integer value that's going to be used as the preset time for the motor, so that we can establish milliseconds for the timing of the timer itself. So the input to that converter is the motor on time milliseconds. So I'm gonna just click in here, type in motor on time milliseconds. That's my input, and the output is gonna be motor on time. So those are the inputs for the NE to block conversion. There's a couple of things we can do before we go on, or we can do it afterwards. And that's the value on the motor. But let's go ahead and try to download this project and see if our variables are responding. Connection failed because I have no hardware. So let's get that going. So I need to run my simulator. Turn it on. Put it in program mode. Try to download again. Make sure the connection is present. All right, download our project. I must have skipped something here. I think we can always go back and check that. Okay, so running, see if it compiles. Hopefully it's going to compile. There's our project. And it's working. I got a couple of things to modify here because what it is this ladder program was meant to be downloaded onto the hardware. And so I'm gonna have to do a couple of little changes, or I can tweak here the simulator. Let's see. So I'm gonna put the simulator in run mode. I am going to close the stop. Which is actually input 10. Okay. And then I'm going to energize with input 11. and it's not doing it. It doesn't stay. What do you think, usual? And it doesn't stay because we haven't set a time for the timer yet. The timer is in blank. That's what it is. So I'm gonna put this in program mode, and I am going to try to go to I guess I could manually input the time here. Yeah, so let's see if it let me input the time. All right. And it's not gonna let me do it. So I'm gonna have to go back and disconnect. So this is gonna give you a little bit of trouble. I mean, that's the nature of this project. And I even lost my toolbox. Okay, so. I think F5. It's all there. Okay, so we're gonna do this here. Disconnect. All right, and what we want is the timer. Let's set that to 5,000 milliseconds or 10,000, whatever. So we needed to set a time for that timer to work. That's really what it was. So it didn't have any time set. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and re-download. And as we do that, we should be able to see that change. So you might need some extra time to complete this lab. It's not going to happen in class, maybe. I'm not being too pessimistic about it. Okay, so now it should run and not be worried. There it is. So our timer is timing. And it's going to trigger at the 10 milliseconds. Run it again. And it's going to stop at 10 milliseconds. So you can modify that. Okay, so the timer is doing what it's supposed to do. What else we got going on here? So we can go to the local variables to look at the actual all right, and we're not done with the tutorial there yet, but that's the beginning of it. There's a second part to it. Adding separate lines of code. And adding tags. So I'm gonna continue on from there. Disconnect. Yes, you. Right here? Yes. So that is actually part of the variable that we declare. So you're not going to be able to have this one right here, you know? Okay, so you said the ladder instruction, right? And then you can double click on it. Did you do the variables when we started the variables? Okay, you're gonna come here, and this is where you expand this one, right? The motor timer, and that's one of the bits, right? The Q is one of the bits, just like the flip flop, right? Q not Q. That's where, and then you select the third one right there, motor timer dot Q. That actually is the same as the done bit. So when the motor is done, that Q bit is gonna turn on. All right, let's continue to build. So the instruction says to add a few more aliases to the system. So we go here, and what they're asking us to do is to create some variables in there. So digital input 0 is push button right. So I'm gonna change this to make it PV right. Input 1 is PV left. And then they have, I think this one might have an error, but you're gonna find it and hopefully fix it. This program might have an error. So digital output 6 is the green light. I'm gonna call it pilot light. I'm gonna call that one purple. Pilot light. And then we're gonna add a counter to this thing. By creating a variable count counter. that's going to be a local variable called counter. And that's going to be an integer counter. And it's going to start the count at 0. All right, so then I'm going to have to find that counter to be added on to the program. I'm going to save this project. As tutorial 2. I think there's some issues with this tutorial, but we're going to do our best with this tutorial. I think there's some flaws, possibly. It should give you enough to build the assignment itself. So even if it's not perfect. Purple light up to 7. So there might be a flow on it, but yeah, again, it should give you the exposure to do assignment 2. It's not clear where the counter goes, but we will add it on. Okay. All right, counter. And that counter doesn't look like the one that I have. Okay, that's gonna be interesting. I wonder if that's an open down counter that they have. Let's see. How are you guys doing? Are you also against the block with me right there? That we are? No? Okay. Which one logical? Initial value, because in the tutorials, it said to change the logical value to okay. Initial value should be, yeah, initial value. If you just open the variables themselves, you should be able to see that. Right. Yeah. So, all right. Maybe that's the wrong counter. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna have to go back. Trouble with the computer, Zach? It won't connect? Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, try another one maybe. So I'll try another instruction block in here. Oh, I see. They're using a different method for a counter. That's what it is. So when you guys come across that, you have to really put a clinical eye because it's not a regular counter. It's a math operation. No, to count the iterations. Yeah, so you will think that there is a tone, a top, or up and down counter, but it's not. They're using just a math instruction block, and that's why I couldn't find it. So those are little things that are kind of hidden there. Counter. Is you all doing okay? Yep, find that beat. Okay. All right, so we have the counter set and then the any converter. I'm going to rerun my project just to make sure that oh, and Trey is online. I'm sorry, Trey, I didn't mean to ignore you. We're so into the programming that we forgot about you. I'm sorry about that. You doing okay out there? I hope so. All right, so I'm gonna download this guy. Give it a shot. Just a little heads up, you're gonna find that your assignment is actually a little bit easier than the actual tutorial. For whatever reason, it should be just easier to build a project out of specs than to follow the tutorial. So I don't mean to discourage you. I think the tutorials it's a good exposure to know where things are, and you probably want to get to the end of it. But when you're done and said, and you jump into the actual assignment, you're going to find that it's easy to implement. And you can use the same tutorial, or you can start from scratch for the assignment. And it's going to be easier than the tutorial itself. All right, so that's that. There is a few flaws in there. You're going to discover them. One that I'm seeing is that they ask you to label a global variable, green light being digital output 6, but when you actually build the ladder, they're calling that digital output 4. So you have to kind of mash up those ideas in there, so that you're not blown away by the misguidance of the tutorial. Uh-huh.
Every time I connect the stimulated, it brings up my previous program.
Yes, yes. And that's the issue that you had before also, right?
What's that?
That's the issue you had before. Remember, you commenting that.
And it completely erases all that programs.
Okay. Okay. It looks like there's a conflict of controller setup. That's really what it is. So here's what you want to do. Bring up the actual program you want to run, and you're gonna have to copy that ladder, right? And then you're gonna go ahead and set up. Like if I was you, let me just. So if I was having the same problem, I'm gonna disconnect here, and that will be one solution. So I will copy the whole program or whatever I want to copy, right? Copy. And then I'm going to start a brand new.